Good. Oh, wow. That was instant. Okay. So, well, good evening, everyone. We're live. It's Sid Graf for the Huge Convention. We got Brian Gottlieb on with us. And Brian's the author of Beyond the Hammer. I got my copy right here. A great story. But we're tonight, Brian, first of all, thanks very much for being on with us. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. You do such great work in the industry, and you have such a cool convention coming up. So yeah, we have some fun things to talk about.
Okay, good. Well, it's always funny when we get ready for the huge convention. I mean, our team, we're preparing for it from the second day after last year's ended. We take a day off and then we don't talk about it. And then we start back up and we've been working and working. But really, not much happens publicly until about 90 days before the show. And then attention goes up. And that's when all the ticket sales start happening. So it's starting to get really exciting. Me and two of our teammates, we refer to our wives as the huge convention widows at this point in time, because we're just so busy doing stuff. But so on Thursday, the 21st, you're going to be our keynote speaker,
right?
Which is excellent. But before I ask this question, people are jumping on live. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. When you pop in, just take a second and say hello in the comments and let us know where you're joining from. And in 15 or 20 minutes or so, we're going to give away 2 tickets to the huge convention. I've got a little trivia question for everybody. So with that, so a lot of people, Brian, think of they're like, hey, if somebody built a 9-figure business, pretty much in the industry, but specifically in home service, they're like, this guy's a unicorn. Do you ever consider yourself remarkable and special? Or you just go, I don't know, I was just doing a thing.
I think the thing that most business owners have in common, especially in the blue collar and the home services industry or the home improvement industry, it's not like we built this giant business plan with this great concept on how we're going to build this massive business. What happens is we probably were working for somebody, didn't like working there anymore, so we started doing some stuff on our own, and next thing you know, we get a little traction, and before you know it, we've got ourselves a business. And quite often in that process, we don't actually know what we're doing or how to grow. And all that stuff, by the way, is perfectly normal. But for me, it was about how do I go from survival, where the only rule of business is to stay in business, to, okay, now I have a job, but nobody would want my job because it's a nightmare. But then how do you get to a business where you actually have to start adding people and processes and all those sorts of things? And there are certainly steps to it. But look, I think once you have some success with it, then you can really start to build momentum. And that's when fun things really start to happen.
Yeah, for sure. We're here. We've got a handful of people jumping in. This is Kyle from Austin, Texas, hopping in. And hey, Kyle, good to see you, man. And our friend Lex from Houston, Texas. We got all our Texans coming in strong right now. So,
perfect.
Good. What was, out of curiosity, when you said, and it so resonates when you start, you're like, I just got to survive. And then you go, it's utter freaking chaos. I don't own a business and a job. But then what was your first goal when you started? Because, the story is like $3,000 and a card table.
Yeah, right. It was $3,000 on a plastic folding table, and there wasn't a lot of $3,000 more to put into the business, just to be clear, right? Because you got a bunch of kids and all that stuff. But look, in the beginning, what I actually started to realize, one of the early principles of business was that if nothing else, the lead is sacred. If nothing else, the lead is sacred. And I think what happens with a lot of business owners, by the way, we get so caught up. You can go on social media and everybody's talking about you've got to document your processes and all these sorts of things. But the truth is, that's a very difficult thing to do if you don't first understand what are your business disciplines. As an example, it's much easier if I say, okay, the lead is sacred. Then I can say that's a discipline. Then I have to ask the question, so how does a sacred lead get treated? Well, we have to respond to it in 10 seconds. What technology do we need? We have to convert it to a sales call. What scripts do we need? Then all of a sudden, your systems and processes start to get a lot easier once you first identify your disciplines. And we're going to talk about that at your conference to show you some ways you can really think about that.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So with what several people in our mastermind wanted to ask is what were some of the inflection points as you were growing from the desperation to chaos to actual systems? And the primary question that came up was, as your business grew, how did you work with or help? Like you've got staff, you've got people that were great, but now the business has either outgrown them or outgrown their skills. How did you help them?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, as I write about in my book, one of the keys to leadership and to business is that leaders model their business as a training organization. I used to think, well, when I first started the company, I would have said, well, we're a construction company. As we grew a little bit, I would say, well, we were a sales and marketing company that happened to be in home improvements. But what really allowed us to grow was becoming a training organization. And when we do that, then we have to say, okay, what does a training organization do? How do we train and develop people? How would we not be held hostage by rules that you can't find good talent out there? How do we grow people?
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the answer early on and how did that change?
Well, look, the answer early on was understanding, just as your team changes, and it is true that sometimes the people that get you to one level aren't the same people that get you to a whole nother level because the skill sets have to change. But also we as leaders have to change. Our role changes, our purpose changes too. In the early days of business, like I said, your purpose is survival. But over time, your purpose is then, okay, how do I make sure my team is successful? Because in the early days, the success of the business comes down to me. If it's just me, the success of the business is all about me. But the moment you start to have to add people to your team, and whether you're washing windows or it doesn't matter, or power wash, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. But when you have other people doing that, now the success of your business is very much tied to how well your teams perform, both when you're watching and when nobody's looking. And that's kind of the art and science to business. To how do we get an aligned team that performs consistently at a high level? And that's the art of business. Yeah.
Okay. For sure. So the lead character in your story in the book, Beyond the Hammer, is oh gosh, I wrote it down so I can remember. George Warren.
George Warren.
How autobiographical is George?
People ask me that all the time, right? So the first thing you should know is his mentor named Marty. Okay, when he gives a tour of his office, that's actually my office. So it was a nod to anybody that's ever been through our facility. They would know that's what it was right away. Okay, so that was a nod. But what I also share with you, and again for the people that haven't read the book yet, it's the book is in two parts. The first half is a parable. It's a business parable about this contractor that's really struggling with all kinds of stuff coming at him in all directions, something we all can relate to. Yeah. And he meets his mentor. So the first half of the book is a business parable. And in George's struggle is me, and in Marty is me too. So there's a bit of me in both characters at different points in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, so your background before the starting Tundraland. I'm not sure what it was, but you built the business in about 12 years from 0 to 9 figures, which sounds like riding a rocket ship. Did you bring some leadership skills with you, or did you just grow really, really fast?
Yeah, well, I'm a combination, right? A combination. One of the things that happened was prior to me starting my business, I've always carried the bag into the home and sold at the kitchen table ever since I was 18 years old and selling pots and pans. Right? Mm-hmm. So I knew the sales side of things. But prior to starting my business, I was a consultant in the home improvement industry. And I got to visit a whole lot of companies across the country over my years. And I got to see two types of companies, and I kept a list of it. And in my journal that I carried with me all the time, on one page, I had, if I ever open up a business, I'm definitely doing these things. And on the other page was, if I ever open up a business, I'm never doing these things. Because I also got to see a lot of problems out there. So that was kind of really helpful to me. It was really helpful. But also was really helpful in scaling my business. And I think you do this really well, is that I didn't want to be in a bubble in my business all by myself. I wanted to network with like-minded business owners that are also trying to grow together. Many of us, what's interesting, we started our own little mastermind group. And when we started, there were 12 of us. We originally called ourselves the Dirty Dozen, and then it became the Big 12. But we all grew our businesses together. Back in the days when we started, in total sales, all 12 of us represented probably under $100 million in sales.
Yeah.
Today, those same 12 businesses represent about $3 billion in revenue.
Wow.
When you talk about growth, it's just incredible when you put your mind together with other people.
Yeah. So a quick question on that with Were the Dirty 12 or the Super 12? Were you all in the same area in the same town? Did you meet in person, or was this you spread out?
We were all over the country in non-competing areas across the
Okay.
country. We sold similar products. We sold bath remodeling and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
look, it was important that we met on a regular basis. We trusted each other. We left our egos at the door, and we shared what we were struggling with or where we were winning. And the thing is, when you have that kind of a relationship, and then when you get your production managers to know each other and your marketing managers to know each other, and then all of a sudden this ripple effect that happens inside of the organization it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yeah.
And that's why your event is so important, by the way. It is.
Okay. Yeah.
It keeps people out of their bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, this is about you, not me. The first time I ever went to an industry event, I'd been in business for 15, almost 16 years before I ever went. I thought industry events were probably a waste of time. I should be home earning money. And I went, and it was this big eye-opening. Like, I began to network with, I met people that understood the struggle. I met people that were further along the journey than I was, and people that were up and coming. So I was able to help others and then get mentors. And it was a turning point for me and my business to turn it from chaos to a business and not a job.
Yeah. And that's a great word, chaos. One of the early lessons I had to learn is that in the early days when I launched the business, we had one rule: just sell it. Just sell stuff. We didn't use the word stuff; we used a different word, but it was just sell stuff. And what we learned is that chaos can produce revenue. Boy, we were able to generate revenue. We didn't make any money, but we sure sold a lot of stuff. Chaos produces revenue, but discipline produces profit. And that was a big lesson to learn. And to have discipline, you need an aligned team and a strong culture.
Yeah, I love that, because I do hear frequently people say, you don't have any problems that more sales won't solve. And I'm like, I don't believe that's true. Like, having more revenue is helpful in a lot of ways, but you can have things going on in the background that will kill you no matter how much money is coming in.
Yeah, sometimes more revenue will kill you because you can't keep up with it. And that's another problem, And I think another lesson that I learned early on also was that when I started my business, we were a sunroom company, sunroom editions. And boy, did we build some beautiful sunrooms that we didn't make any money on. and what I learned also in business is complexity is the enemy of execution. That you need your business as simple as possible. But making a simple business is very, very hard. Mm-hmm. And making a complicated business is very easy. It's easy. There's always a reason to make things more complicated than they need to be. It's very hard to remove that complexity from your business. But once you remove the complexity, that's when you have a real scalable business, because complexity requires unicorns as managers. And we both know how hard unicorns are to find.
Oh, yeah.
So simplicity wins.
Wow. So when you were, in your early growth, was your growth, because it was fast.
It was fast.
Was it hockey stick? Like you went, boom, rocket, or was it like a pretty good curve?
It was a hockey stick, because the first few years was figuring things out. It was really proving the fact that we could actually make a lead, sell a lead, and install a lead with any level of consistency. Once we understood that, if you ask me what is the most important discipline in business, of all the disciplines there are, look, I bet just about everybody that's going to be at your convention, and I'm going to ask the question when I'm there: how many people need to hire somebody inside of their organization, but they're afraid to take on the overhead to do that? Okay, that's a real concern for most businesses across the nation. Yeah. But that's a symptom of a much bigger problem. The real truth is that the company they're not confident that they can hit their forecasted targets that they've created. The single most important discipline in business is understanding not just how to create targets, but how to hit them with consistency. Because when you're good at that, the willingness to invest in the business, well, you got that all day long. If I don't know if I'm going to hit my targets, I'm not so willing to invest in the business because I don't want to put that money at risk. But if I'm confident I'm going to hit my targets, investing in the business becomes easy. It becomes easy. And that's when things really start to scale.
Yeah. Okay. Hang on one second. I'm going to give a quick shout out to everybody that's joining us live. Yeah. We got Sheila Smeltzer. We got Florida in the house. And now we got Jeff from Virginia and Ethan in Branson, Missouri. We held a conference there. Our conference there is in 2019, I believe. And
That's great.
then our Texas contingency. You guys, everybody, thanks for joining. Go ahead and yeah, I don't even know how to do it, but share this live stream into a couple of groups that you frequent so other people can jump in, ask Brian questions. If you guys that are on live, if you've got questions that you want to ask, just type it into the comments and we'll see if we can get to them. So let me get my list of questions from our mastermind, Brian. One second, because they're like 8. Yeah. All right. Hang on. I got to make sure we've already answered a bunch of these. Okay. What was a key strategy or what was a favorite strategy to increase your revenue per technician? Like thinking on a technician level.
Yeah. So a couple things. First of all, that margins only tell half the story, right? A margin only tells half the story. What we want to look at is in business, we want to look at revenue per crew day, right? When we send a team out, if I send a team out, how much revenue are they bringing back, right? Because I could sell like this pen, I could buy this pen for $1 and sell it for $10, and I can celebrate a 90% gross profit margin. But if I only sell one a day, I'm in trouble. I'm not going to have a business very long, right? Yeah. So margins only tell half the story. What I need to do is I need to only do things where I can maximize my revenue per crew day. So I was very careful, even as I started adding different products and services to our businesses, that I was very, very conscious of that. And look, and I think also when we think about how hard it is to generate a lead to begin with, and we finally get an opportunity to earn somebody's business, how can we sell them other products and services that we have? Because then you don't have that same repetitive marketing cost. And that's also super important. How do we keep the customer involved in our business for a very, very, very long period of time without being obnoxious? Okay. We used to send out anniversary cards to our customers. So if we did a project for them, we do all kinds of other drip campaigns to keep top of mind, but then we send out an anniversary card letting them know, hey, it's your 1 year or your 4-year anniversary. It was just kind of cool. It really helped a lot.
So, and I'm sorry, to be clear, this is the anniversary of the time you remodeled for them, or
correct?
Okay, great. Because at first I was like, wow, you kept track of their wedding anniversary. That's cool.
Yeah, right. But I think also, by the way, I think the thing in business too is this. Look, business owners have to try stuff. Business owners are great decision makers by the nature of it. Okay, and I think you've got to try different lead sources. I can't tell you which source is going to work in every single market. What I can tell you is this: it's okay to be wrong, just don't be wrong for long.
Yeah, so keep it wrong.
Right. Go ahead and get stuff out there. Try stuff. Mix it up. See what's working. See what's not working. But I would rather try a lot of things and have a few things work than be caught in analysis paralysis, not trying anything at all. I know that not everything's going to work. And again, it's okay to be wrong, but I'm not going to be wrong for long. I think it's a core business discipline also.
Okay. Where do you see owners? Because you help and mentor a lot of people now.
I do.
Where do you see typically the bottlenecks or maybe the resistance to letting something go? Because you talked about earlier, like the beginning, it is chaos, but it's easy to build a chaotic business and hard to build a simple business. And
I think one of the issues, and I was guilty of it in my early days, is, and especially when look, we're all in on our businesses, we're all in financially, we're all in on our business, and we don't want to be a micromanager, but we tend to default to that accidentally. We want to make a lot of decisions inside of the business, and it really stifles people's growth. And we have to give people an opportunity to make mistakes. We gotta let people grow. We have to empower people, because otherwise the business is only going to grow to the capabilities of the leader of the business, and that's really a problem.
Yeah,
and I think connected with that is also understanding that as you build a team, the truth is this: that the lid of the business is directly connected to the lid of the team. The business can only grow to what the team can grow to. So when we think about what is our role as the leader of the organization, is to help people not just only realize that potential, but truly reach it. And that means empowerment and all these other things that are so necessary for business skills and business leadership.
Yeah. As you were growing your team like that in the leadership and helping raise the lid, when you introduced ways for people to grow personally, did you get pushback or resistance, or had you already built a culture as a place where we're always learning, we're always growing, where it was expected?
Look, it's more difficult when you bring in people with a lot of experience, because then they think they know it all. And what comes with that is also a very different culture. They bring their culture with them. They bring all that stuff from the last company.
Yeah.
When you start to really become a training organization, then you need to hire people that are trainable. If I'm going to be a training organization, I better hire trainable people. Otherwise, I'm not going to be much of a training organization. That then becomes a lot easier. And we got to the point where we very seldom want to hire anybody with experience. We would rather groom and train them ourselves, because experienced people that know what they're doing, not only do they sometimes resist training, they also keep their skill set very much to themselves. It's like their own little trick, their own little secret that they don't like to share. And a training organization is collaborative.
Okay. Did you generally get your leadership from within, like people rising up?
Yeah, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to grow within the organization. As you read about in the book, George made the horrible mistake of, instead of posting an ad internally first, he posted something online and got all this pushback from his team, rightfully so. If people don't think there's an opportunity in your organization, guess what? They're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They're going to go somewhere else. Look, but ultimately, to build a business, you have to commit to building people, and that's what it is in the service industry. Unlike other organizations and other businesses in technology or manufacturing, in the services industry, 99.9% of everybody on your team is interacting with the customer, one way or another, either on the phone, face to face. They're interacting with the customer. So individual performance really matters. Culture really matters. How the customer journey really matters. How people think about the business and about their role. The way we think of what we do is how we do what we do. So mindset, culture, all that stuff really, really matters.
Okay. When you were talking about hiring from within, hiring from without, and George posting, the job ad outside of the thing, Kyle popped in. He said gut punch. I think he experienced the same thing. He goes, "Oh boy."
I hear you.
All right. A couple questions. Kyle actually asked a question earlier where you're talking, and it's related to your tech stack. Do you recall, or do you know what your tech stack was like at 40 million? What was your CRM? How were you managing stuff?
Yeah. So look, when I first started the business, when I started the business, there was another sunroom company that had our market, and there was all this. There were all these old leads that we got. Okay, when we took over this territory, and the lead list was so old. My son used to come over to my office after school. He was 15 years old at the time, and he would go through and call these numbers that were on this little tiny, all printed out on a piece of paper, and he'd call it number by number by number. We had no CRM at all, and some of the people died. I mean, we're talking about a dead lead. These leads were so old, they died a long time ago. But okay, eventually, we got into a CRM, but even back then, it was like, it's amazing how much technology has leaped forward today versus how it was even 8 years ago in the home services industry. So, but at $40 million, look, we had to have a good phone system where we could, record calls so we can do training. We had a, robust CRM. And then, we had a great presentation tool that we used. It was called Engage. It's a great presentation tool. And of course, financing I looked at financing as part of our tech stack, because it was truly a technology play to help us sell more deals. Yeah. So, and today there's just so many great options out there, but I also think that when you think about the core of a business, right, to get to $40 million, first and foremost, I think a company needs a very, very well-designed website that's designed for conversions. It's designed to catch a lead and convert a lead, catch a name and convert it. And, and everything else can stack on top of that. But I think that's really important, also discipline inside of the business.
Yeah. And that's where you started, was talking about the speed to lead, or like how the lead is sacred. Right?
Lead is sacred.
I love that. All right. Let's do this. I had put on screen a little while ago that we're going to give away a ticket in a couple of minutes. This is the time. Let's give away a ticket. And here's what I always do. I just have some silly trivia question, and the first person to type the answer in correctly as it shows up on my feed. I'm not looking at Facebook. I'm looking at different software. and we've got viewers live on YouTube and on Facebook. So I don't know how it shows up on Facebook or YouTube, but the first person that I see with the correct response gets a free ticket to the huge convention this year. That's $299 that you don't have to spend on a ticket. You can spend on food or beer or taking Brian out for a cigar.
Yeah.
So the question is this. So the huge convention has been going on for quite a while. It's actually our 13th convention. Where was the first one held? Not the venue, but what city was the first huge convention held? First one to type it in and get it right. And or I may just give the ticket to Rob because he's so kind to tell me how cool I am today. Like, that's probably worth it to get right there, Rob. Rob, you already have a ticket as part of the mastermind. Okay, first submission here. Kyle says Orlando is not Orlando. It's definitely in the South. So we'll keep going until somebody pops it in. Jeff, if you know, Ethan, if you know, I don't even know if you can Google that and find out where the first one was. I don't know if it's fairly common knowledge because we say it a lot, but here we go. Let's see. We got Sheila down in Florida with Nashville, and Nashville is the correct answer. So, Sheila, you win a free ticket to the huge convention. Congratulations. But guess what? You already have 2 free tickets because you're part of the mastermind. So what do we do with that? Who would you like us to give it to? Of anybody that's on here live? Just look at the comments and pick somebody. If it's okay with you, we can give it away, or you can give it to some of your team members. Sorry, I didn't mean to take it away from you like that. So, Sheila, I'm going to watch for your comment here. Tell me what you'd like to do with your ticket, if you want to bring your daughter or someone from your team, or if you want to give it away. It is. Ethan is winning on the comments that I said, give it to Brian. We're going to give you a free ticket, Brian.
Awesome. It's great.
Okay.
I hope Ethan is bringing that cute little baby with him. That's a cute little kid in his picture there.
That's his son Finn. And last year, Finn was at the convention last year in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's great.
Sheila said, anyone who's never gone. And Jeff says, I highly recommend this guy right here. So what do you say, Sheila? Is it this guy right here? She goes, any first timer. Okay, we're going to park that and see if anyone hasn't been that's on the live feed and you want this ticket, type it in to the comments and it's yours. Yeah. Oh, Rob, give it to a Brian, not to the Brian.
You're taking my ticket away. I thought I got a free ticket. Now I don't have a free ticket.
Now you're gonna have to arm wrestle somebody, the bouncers, to get in the show. Tell you what, let's do this. Jeff, just to Jeff. I know you don't have a ticket yet this year. We had chatted earlier online. So you have a ticket to the huge convention. I'm going to shoot you a message after we're done to give you the code so you can claim it. Sound good? And thank you very much, Sheila. And I picked. How's that?
Great. That's amazing.
All right, cool. Thank you. Hey, here's another question from one of our mastermind guys. And I love this question. He said, what are some of the most important things for a home service business to get right in its first $5 million of annual revenue to set it up for long-term success?
Yeah. Well, it's a series of things. Number one, you have to be able to make data-driven decisions. At $5 million, you have to be able to make very specific decisions based on the data, not on our gut. We get to the first million on gut. That's what we do. We don't know what we're doing. We get to the first million by gut. But as you start to get volume, your financials, being able to read a P&L and balance sheet is very, very important. Making sure your financials are set up right. You're able to close out a month effectively, and you're able to see what did we learn from this and where are we going with this. And so that's one thing. The second thing is that at $5 million, you have a team, okay? And you might think that you have great systems and processes, but let me tell you something. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist, because you'll have iterations of that as the business grows. If you think it's being done this way and you find out it's being done a totally different way. So that's another real key discipline in really trying to scale, is make sure, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist, having that mindset. And I think the third thing is the idea that when you're coaching people, okay, different people are coached differently for effectiveness. And when it comes to coaching people, there's a big difference between being right and being influential. There's a very, very big difference. I might be right that somebody isn't doing something a certain way. It doesn't mean they're going to learn a lesson from it. I have to be influential with people. It's the same as true with customers. You might be able to go to somebody's home. You might show up at somebody's home that has filthy windows and really needs their windows cleaned, but they're not hiring you, because there's a big difference between being right and being influential. And I think that's the key in business in general when it comes to dealing with people.
Did earlier on, and I know I keep reflecting early on, because most of us can relate to a business that's doing 20 million or less, because we've never gone to that extent. But did you have the confidence to be influential with your team, or did you ever feel like kind of like an imposter with your own company?
Yeah, look, imposter syndrome is real. You bet I did. I felt like there were a lot of times in the business I didn't know what I was doing. I've never run a $20 million company. I never ran a $5 million company. I never ran a $10 million, never ran a $20 million company. So the voices in our head can really start to speak to us, and we hope that we're giving the team the right advice. But what I'll also say is that you just got to not pay any attention to that noise. This is your business. You've got to run your business. You got to drive your business, and self-doubt is real, but ultimately over time, you start to get some wins, and you can really start to build momentum off of the wins, and just give yourself a break on stuff.
Yeah.
Is what
yeah. All right. I mentioned earlier, like your growth in 12 years is pretty phenomenal. Did you, after you kind of got where, like, okay, I'm not fighting for my next meal, I'm not in desperation mode, maybe it's chaotic. Did you have a moment where you're like, I'm going to put my foot on the freaking pedal and just see how hard can I be drive? Like, how big can we grow? Or what was the catalyst for really driving big growth?
Right. So a couple things to that. I used to do this to my team all the time. I put my fingers like this because my goal was to bend each department. I wanted to bend each department at any given point without it breaking. Because what I wanted to do was create a problem to fix a problem, to create a problem to fix a problem. I have too many leads. Okay, I don't have enough salespeople. Let me fix that problem. Now I have plenty of salespeople. I don't have enough installers. Okay, now I got plenty of installers, but now I need more leads. Let me constantly figure out how do I create a problem to fix a problem. And that was really the methodology to grow the business.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, were there times when did anybody break, or did you like put them back together, put a splint on them, and go, it's gonna be okay, we can do this?
Yeah, let's just say I probably could have kept on a full-time therapist for my team and kept them busy. For me, look, I'm all gas and no brake. And the other part of it is I need to also surround myself with people that are able to challenge some of the crazy ideas that I have, and that's also important. I just got to listen to that. And not that I'm going to follow everything, but I need to be at least open to it.
At some point, you're like you're the successful guy. Even in your business, in your community, people look up to you. You're like, you've accomplished something really impressive or important. And did you struggle at that point, not having did your circle end up being a lot of yes men or yes women that were going, oh, Brian, you're so cool, you're great? How did you find the people that speak the truth to you?
Yeah. Well, look, it's very easy to get in a meeting, and if I say something or if I ask a question, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to try to, have the right answer, and then look to me to see what I'm saying, to see if I approve. But what's more valuable, and you have to just publicly appreciate it and celebrate challenging questions. I would rather have a challenging question than the right answer, right? Because that's what you really need as a business leader. You need it. So I think that also is part of the culture, though. Look, I think I've been very fortunate that because we were figuring out stuff together and we were growing the business together, and I would share that, look, if we're working a home show or we're trying to set leads, I'm out there as a co-producer in the early days. So, that brings credibility. And also, when we don't get things right, we got to talk about why we didn't get it right, but not about the people. Because look, Sid, let's say you're my production manager and I got a problem with some customer, and then and I say, what happened with this job? How did things go wrong? And you say, it wasn't me, it was them. You're going to immediately point your fingers to other people.
Yeah.
So instead, I've got to approach it. Hey, Sid, we got a problem with this job. I know we have the right people. Help me understand, where do you think our process is broken that's creating this? I really wanted to get our team to focus on the process, because when you focus on the process and where the process is broken, people don't take it personally, but then they're also not afraid to challenge the process, because the ultimate goal is, how do we have a better process? And that is open to anybody to challenge it.
Okay, that's really good. Hey, I want to ask Rob's question. He posted in here, and then I have sort of we need to, it's want to be respectful of your time. I have a closing question for you right after that. So he was talking about as you were bending people and that balancing act of more leads, more installers, more sales. With that scale department by department, how did you get it to grow more steadily in all three departments? I don't know if
that makes sense. Well, look, okay, in the early days, when you have 2 or 3 salespeople, you almost have to schedule to perfection to keep everybody busy. You almost have to schedule to perfection. It's a lot easier when you have more salespeople and you have more leads. I can have a couple of people at the bottom of a batting order and a couple of people at the top of the batting order. And the way I found balance is that and especially on the sales world, if I have the philosophy that my best sales reps are going to get the most leads, and my bottom sales reps are going to be back in the house for training, that automatically gives me a buffer in if I have too many leads or if I have or too many salespeople, that gives me a buffer. I think if you think about being overstaffed for the sake of training and the betterment of the business in different areas as you're growing, that's kind of what helps to add balance. But also, it's a matter of and it's different for everybody. Which area in your business is the hardest for you to scale? Okay, which area of your business is the hardest for you to scale? Some people struggle finding installation people or technicians. Other people struggle trying to find people that can generate leads. Other people struggle trying to find people that can sell. Look, I think if you know the hardest area to scale that area first, because that's the one that's really going to get you in a bind if you're not growing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Okay, so since you've published the book, and to remind everybody, like Beyond the Hammer, it's a quick
audio book, and it's in print. They can get the audio book too. The audio book is terrific. You listen to it; it's fantastic.
Did you record the audio?
I recorded the second half of the book on the audio book, the strategy side. I used a very professional narrator, Eduardo Ballerini. He used to be an actor on The Sopranos, and he did the parable side with all these characters. It's a great listen if you like audiobooks. That's on Amazon.
Cool. Okay. Okay, good. So with now, you get interviewed a lot, and you're helping a lot of people. You're mentoring. You're speaking at different events like the huge convention. What's one question that you really wish somebody would answer, but you rarely or never get asked?
What a great question, right? What a great question. Why, Brian, you had such a successful business. Why did you sell it?
And so when I repeat that question back to you, Brian, you had such a successful business. Why did you sell it?
I'm not going to answer that. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Because what I found, and this is really interesting, is that as the business was growing, once I had 600 employees, right? Mm-hmm. And I found that, and I was 62 years old at the time too, by the way, with 600 employees. What I found is that I want to call it chutzpah, the energy, the chutzpah, the courage to take a lot of risk as a young entrepreneur was waning. And I started to become a little more risk averse. I got this big business and I'm just trying to keep it all running together. And I thought, if I ever get hit by a bus, is my wife going to step in and run this business? That's not fair to her.
Yeah.
Combined with private equity, they were jumping over each other to get in our space. We were in a well-positioned business. They were great businesses, all three of them that I sold. And, it was the right time. It was the right time. And I needed to write a book. So, but that was the two primary reasons was I was getting a little risk averse and I was worried that about my wife having to step in and run the business.
Yeah. Yeah. Very fair. Well, then I said that was the last question. You brought up the book. What was the motivation to write a book, and how has that how is it met your expectations? How's it turned out compared to what you had in mind when you're like, I'm writing a book?
The motivation was, I feel like a lot of leadership books aren't applicable to the home improvement industry or to the home services industry. Yeah. And I feel that they don't. I feel they tend to be a little preachy, and I wanted something that was very relatable, that spoke to people, was approachable and actionable, and people could do it, and then they can see the results from it. Because I'm all about, if you want to build a business, you have to build people, and the entrepreneur affects so many people. That's why I love working at the entrepreneur level, because they hire people, they're life changers. They really are. Yeah. And so and for me, look, my thing is that when I started really going all in on building people, here's what I realized. I realized the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you finally figure out why. Wow. And I realized that I'm on this planet to make a positive impact in this world, and I do it through the entrepreneur and through helping and developing people. Yeah. The result of the book has been terrific. On average, about 4,000 or so books a month are being purchased month after month after month after month. I'm actually heading to London in September for an award, for a book award, for an international book award, which is really cool. So it's been a fun ride. It's been a very humbling journey for me. It's been great.
That's great. Congratulations. Great.
Thank you.
With that amount of book sales, since there was an obtuse little factoid, but that I found online because I was doing a little homework. In 2018, Chunderland was awarded a Guinness Book of World Records. Yeah, but I didn't. But I couldn't find for what.
Yeah. So what's interesting is one of our businesses was putting windows in people's homes, and we always look for cool ways to interact with the community, right? Whether it was people singing in our shower or whatever we did for our shower displays to send a kid to music school. But one of our products was replacement windows. When you put new windows in people's homes, you typically take the old windows out and you throw them in the trash. And we thought that was such a shame. So we started doing, let me show you something. Hold on. We started working with local artists and community members, and we would give people these old window sashes, and we would ask them to turn them into beautiful art pieces like this one right here.
Wow. So okay.
Beautiful art pieces. Okay. And then what we would do is we would take all these window sash art pieces and we would display them in our town in a big community center, and we would do a giant public auction, and all the money raised would go to help somebody in our community that really needed it. So it was a really cool thing. So we did a lot of cool stuff with it. Well, I wondered, we would set up like 100 windows, 200 windows. So I wondered what the world record was on it. So I called Guinness to find out. And Guinness, we could do a whole podcast on calling Guinness, but they didn't have a category. So they said, okay, it's 1,500 windows you have to display. I'm like, 1,500 windows is 2 tractor trailer fulls of windows. That's a tremendous. Where am I going to put these things? Yeah. I mean, so we rented this convention center, and now I need to get these things painted. So I did a giant community calling to have, look, I had this whole convention center was full of plastic folding tables and window sashes and paint. And people came out with their kids, their grandkids, painted windows all weekend. And then we set a Guinness World Record. So it's pretty cool.
Bravo. That's fun. Yeah, that's fun in so many ways.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I got to tell you, thanks again. This has been a lot of fun. But thanks for your time. Like, I recognize that, it's a big deal, and I'm truly excited. I mean, thanks in advance for coming to Nashville. For those of you who still on, like, August 21st, Thursday, the 21st, Brian's going to be on stage, take the stage. I believe it's 9 a.m. We've already got it scheduled to lay out some wisdom, and then maybe have time for some Q&A. But really appreciate it, and look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much, Sid. And thanks to everybody. Appreciate you all. Look forward to seeing you in Nashville.
All right. Thanks very much. I'm going to end the live stream. Stay on for just a sec.